the episode entitled Not a Fan. This is episode one. The series will be focusing on films, music, ideas that most of the world is a-okay with or love, but I myself am not a fan. So it is totally appropriate that the first episode of this series is about the Blair Witch Project from 1999. I first heard about Blair Witch in February of '99. It had premiered, I believe, at Sundance Film Festival, and those of us who were horror fans who had subscriptions or bought regularly at newsstands issues of Fangoria and Rue Morgue were hearing about this film. This was a found footage horror film. Supposedly, it was the real deal. Not quite a snuff film, but a film in which three youths go missing and were never seen again. Fast forward to much later in the year, June of '99, we hear through television media, through trailers and the Hype Machine by Artisan Entertainment that this film is going to be mass released to the public. And supposedly, as before mentioned, it's a true story. Aforementioned, it's a true story. A week before its national release, Sci-Fi Channel airs a show called Curse of the Blair Witch. I'm sure you're all familiar with it, being that later that year, after the Blair Witch was a huge financial success, they put it out on video cassette and DVD. Well, the show, Curse of the Blair Witch, went on to perpetuate the myth that this was indeed a true story. Three youths go missing in Maryland and were never seen or heard from again. Now, this was quite mind-blowing. In 1999, we as a collective horror community had never heard of any such case. Now, reality television, as far as detective shows and crime shows, which are in the hundreds at the point of this recording, at the time of this recording, we're all used to shows like that. Well, there weren't many cold case detective shows in 1999. So having a show that focused on missing 20 somethings and in regards to what was considered to be a horror film was pretty heady stuff. But we all asked the question, how come we had never heard of this on the news? Or, whether it was, television or print media or anything, we never heard about the Blair Witch Project or these missing kids or nothing. The internet, it certainly existed in '99. It had existed since the year I was born in 1979. But by 1999, I'd say less than half the homes in the US had internet. You may have a computer in your household, but chances are it's not connected to the internet. Ours certainly wasn't. We had a computer um, a few months later that I got for college, which I never finished that. Proud college dropout, but that's besides the point. Most people who had computers did not have internet, and there were still plenty of people who did not have computers in their homes in 1999. So, being that this story escaped most of our attentions was completely plausible. Now, I saw the original viewing of the original airing of Curse of the Blair Witch, and I was like, wow, that really is something amazing. I think I'll actually go to see this movie. Fast forward to the end of that week, or into the next week, and it's the day after the national premiere for Blair Witch. It premiered on a Thursday. This is a Friday morning. I'm getting ready for work. And I see a very familiar face on a morning talk show. Lo and behold, it is Heather Donahue, the female lead of the Blair Witch Project. I'm like, wait a minute. And I don't remember what morning talk show this was, but it was definitely in the AM. It was definitely a highly rated morning talk show, and there's Heather Donahue. It's just Hollywood doing their shit. Okay, cool. One less thing, one less movie I got to see in the theaters, no problem. So I go to my workplace, and a couple of my coworkers, which was two females, they said, "Hey Jim, we know you love horror films. How about going with us this Sunday to see Blair Witch Project? And I said, girls, I don't have any interest in seeing this film. I have none. It's bullshit. It's not a real story. Um, I don't care to see it. And they were like, the rest of the shit. They said, come on, dude. Like you are the horror guy. Come see it with us. And they were decent chicks, man. They were decent human beings. They were likable. And I said, okay, all right, I'll go. I mean, the ticket was what? $5 in most cinemas. At our hometown cinema, it was like $3.50. Yeah, I can afford to go. Sure. Okay, I'll see you girls there. So I dreaded seeing it because from the previews, there wasn't anything to see once you realized it wasn't a true case. These kids were not missing. There was no mystery to solve. So I really didn't have any interest in seeing it. But these were my coworkers. They were likable. I said, okay, bite the bullet, go see it. So we show up and we meet at the curb and we're getting ready to go in. And both of the girls are just like super excited about this movie going on. How, wondering if they can solve the mystery. If they're going to see something in the footage to make them realize what happened to these kids. I said, girls, listen, I saw Heather O'Donoghue, who is the main chick in this movie, on Friday morning after the premiere. She's alive. It's bullshit. There is no missing kids. There is no Blair Witch. The legend is fake. There is nothing to this film. They go on and on as we're getting our popcorns, our soda, whatever, and we take our seats. I'm like yawning, saying, "Oh, this is going to be bad." And I really didn't think it was going to be as bad as it was. I actually thought there was going to be some stuff in this movie to make it cinematic. I actually thought there was going to be some gore. I thought there was going to be some horror. I thought there was going to be something. I still didn't want to see it because the whole hype campaign was that this was genuinely a true story. I had no idea how little horror would play into the making of this film, into the existence of this film, as to what you saw in the theater, your experience. So the movie begins, and I remember my two coworkers just oohing and awing over this. Oh, sitting there going, what is there to talk about? This movie is really boring. And an hour into it, my jaw is dropped because I'm, I've sat through an hour of this film and there's nothing to see. Getting lost in the woods, okay, we ran out of cigarettes. Now that was frightening. But other than that, um, a bits of a flannel shirt, and some teeth, bloody teeth wrapped up in it, some twigs lashed together hanging from trees, uh, a zipped up tent with the occupants inside hearing sounds, voices of children, perhaps an old woman cackling, and that's it. Ladies and gentlemen, there is nothing else in the film. That's it. That's it. There's nothing else. There's no dead bodies. There's no gore. There's no nudity. Say what you will. Uh, there is nothing. There is camcorder footage. There is 8mm footage. That's it. There is nothing to this film. And the only time this film could hold any interest to its viewer is if you're thinking it's a true story. These kids were never seen again. That's it. I'm reminded of a couple years ago when a film called Skin and Marine came out, and everybody went on about how there was nothing to this movie. There's nothing to see. There's no horror effects. There's no scares. There's no thrills. There's no chills. This is an absolute piece of shit. And they were right. It is. But my complaint is this. Why in the hell does Blair Witch Project not fall into the same category? There is nothing to see in this film. There's nothing at all. It's bullshit. It's boring. I am a person, just turned 46 years old, okay? Yeah. And I have grandchildren, okay? I even have a great grandchild. I, at 46 years old, am a great grandfather. And I constantly complain about not my grandkids, but about youth, how they have no love for rock and roll. They have no sense of wonderment. They're just really boring people because, again, I'm not talking about my grandkids. I'm talking about people under 20 in general who just don't have a clue about all the stuff that to me and so many people for generations was important as a youth means nothing to them. They're a completely different being. They might as well be from, you know, Saturn, outer space, because it's not the same being. But there's one thing, and only one thing, that I have in common with the youth of today, and that is none of us can stand the Blair Witch Project. They have heard from their older siblings, they have heard from their parents, and maybe at this point, even the grandparents, people my age, saying what an experience, what a terrifying experience the Blair Witch Project was in 1999, in the year 2000, in the year 2001. They have heard these stories, they have grown up with these stories, and at one point they finally decide they're going to watch this legendary horror film that older brother, sister, mom, dad, grandma, and grandpa have been talking about. And they watch it. The end credits roll, and they turn to one another and say, "This is the most boring horror film I've ever seen in my life. What in the hell were they talking about? This is shit." And for once, the youth of the world, I absolutely, completely agree with you. The Blair Witch Project ain't worth a fuck. Now, we have probably a couple million people across the world who are roughly my age. They're a little bit younger, they're a little bit older, they're the same age that I am, within 5 years, who all remember the Blair Witch Project from 1999. Maybe they didn't see it till 2000 or 2001, but most of us were a part of that initial audience that went to see Blair Witch Project. Now, cutting the shit, beyond a shadow of a doubt, it's a fictional story. The actors involved are actors. They're not real people that went missing, okay? You know that it was a gimmick. And you're going to tell me that it is still an enjoyable film to watch. My goodness, man, you're going to sit here and you're going to tell me it's actually a good horror film? What fucking planet do you come from, dude? What the fuck? There is no horror. Maybe if you've grown up in an urban environment your entire life and your sneakers have never left concrete, and you find the woods to be that truly terrifying. The sound of a babbling brook, a creek running. Screams in the night, which are barely screams. Oh, look, somebody took some branches and latched them together with twine and made some stupid looking symbols that are hanging from branches. Oh my goodness, that is absolutely terrifying. Sweet shit, the horror. Well, come on, people. How in the hell do people still love this movie? There is literally nothing to see. There is no cinematic experience going on. I don't blame, listen, I don't blame the actors of the film. I don't even blame the original producers, directors of this film. This film was made, what, in 96, set in 94. It took a couple of years for it to actually land a big money deal. Contracts were signed and people were given money. It goes on to make millions and millions of dollars. It actually outgrossed John Carpenter's masterpiece from 1978, Halloween, as far as being The highest grossing independent horror film of all time. What a slap in the fucking face that is. So it becomes a worldwide sensation, a fucking phenomenon, okay? From 1999 through 2000, this movie is big league and only big leagues. The home video on VHS and DVD outsell basically everything else that comes out for a month or two. People are wearing Blair Witch t-shirts, beanies, hoodies, toboggans, baseball caps. They got it all. I'm sure there was even Blair Witch keychains, bumper stickers. Yeah. Why? I understand you can fool the public, but we're not even talking about right at the time this was a phenomenon. We're talking 30 fucking years later, okay? And I usually self-impose a frame of mind that says I'm not going to say the F word that much. I'm not going to cuss that much. Not this time around, because this is stupid. 30 years later, people are buying $50 box sets of this film to celebrate the 30th anniversary of the Blair Witch Project. I understand nostalgia. I freaking love nostalgia. I live in the past. When I tell you I'm a 20th century dude, I freaking mean it. I don't get off on modern stuff. It's like pulling teeth to get me to make a freaking video because I hate the technology that much. I hate the fact that I'm walking around with basically a television studio production kit in the back pocket of my pants when I go to work. I cannot go to work without the freaking cell phone because I have to clock in through my phone. I work through two different companies every day that I work, and I have to clock in on a cell phone to get paid from those two companies. Cell phones are everywhere, computers are everywhere, technology is omnipresent. And yet here I stand, a proud 20th century dude, loathing it every minute of the day. So, yeah, I don't fit in most circles, never have, and I get off on it. But I will not understand how seemingly intelligent people, shit, people I know who are intelligent, people who are connoisseurs of films, whether it be horror cinema or cinema in general, they know what they're talking about. They know what they like. And for the most part, they got pretty good taste. But when it comes to the Blair Witch Project, they're fucking idiots. Why do you have a love for this film? Nostalgia. What's the nostalgia factor? You got duped in believing this is a wonderful piece of cinema? Is that it? How does this movie continue to amaze you? Because your children, your grandchildren thinks it's boring as all hell, and they're absolutely correct. Yet people buy these editions, $50, $60. Heck, I'm sure there's some that are close to $100 and people are buying, they're buying double copies of them. Why? What is it about this movie that makes you think it's worth anything? In 2001, after the initial huge release of it on VHS and DVD, you couldn't give this movie away. Everybody owned it. Everybody was getting it for Christmas, birthdays, you know. Hey, buddy, you're having a lousy day. Let me buy you a copy of Blair Witch Project and let's have some pizza. Here you go. That movie was freaking everywhere in 2000. I hate the Blair Witch Project so much that I can actually say I enjoy Blair Witch 2, Book of Shadows, and the semi-sequel to Blair Witch. Um, what's it called? Blair Witch. They're not great movies, not by a long shot, but both are a hell of a lot more entertaining than the Blair Witch. They each have production value. Shit, get this, what a novelty. They both have special effects. Film scores. I don't love any of them, but at least they're movies. At least there is some entertainment, some gore, and some horror to be derived. What horror exists in the Blair Witch Project? Once you know it's fake, once you know it's attempting to be a movie, somewhat, what enjoyment is there to be had from this fine film? I don't see it, I don't hear it, I don't get it. To be truly honest, I had not seen this film since 2000 when on a Sunday, my one day off from work back then, I actually watched it on HBO. So that meant twice I had seen Blair Witch Project and said, no, I was completely right. There's nothing to this film. It's completely boring and dull. 3 weeks ago, I watched it for the third time just to make sure I truly didn't miss anything. And my wife was, she didn't sit down and watch it for me, but she's never been a fan of the film. And she would happen, along coming down the hallway into the kitchen. She stopped in the living room and watched a few seconds of it at a time. And she made the comment, she said, you know what, you're right. This movie is completely boring. There's no point other than trying to sell the fact that this is a true story. Once you take the true story out of the equation, there's nothing there. And she's absolutely right. I'm absolutely right. But I watched it that third time to make sure I hadn't missed something. No, I had. My thoughts on this film are the same as they were in July or June of 1999. This movie is incredibly dull. Okay. Camcorder horror uh, is not terrifying unless you have something to look at. You know, it's a video camera, it's VHS, it's a camcorder. Roll tape. Give us some special effects, give us some nudity, give us some screams, give us some gnarly music in the background, and maybe you've got something worth an occasional watch. But give us nothing, and why watch it a second time? I mean, I don't get it. You know, and I'm not gonna say any names, but there are people that I follow. And I don't follow many people on YouTube. I really don't. In fact, I have a rule. I watch you for a full year before I subscribe to your channel. Now, I know that does sound nuts, but I want to make sure that I'm not wasting my time in subscribing to somebody who I'm going to end up believing is just a total jerk off. I've wasted my time. Uh, just that few seconds of clicking the subscribe button. So there's very few people I subscribe to, but there are people I have subscribed to who still hold this movie aloft. They say Blair Witch Project, man, what a freaking ride. What ride? There, there's nothing to be gained. There's not. This movie has nothing. Now, are you going to tell me that the shots? Yeah, are you in love with camcorder footage? I mean, there is something to 8mm. I do dig 8mm and Super 8mm and 16mm. I dig all that. But is that what's holding your attention? Have you never been to a forest in your life that you just watched that movie with such awe and intensity? Look at the leaves, look at the foliage, look at the trees. Do we see fauna in this? I can't remember. Are there squirrels? Are there birds? I don't remember. I don't remember any of that. And I watched it 3 weeks ago. I just know it's really lousy footage. And three kids, 20 somethings, all older than me, by the way, um, now, uh, who are doing a good job of acting. That they are. Their acting's fine. And I guess it doesn't hurt that they went by using their own first names, but um, their acting's good. But what you're reacting to is nothing. A zipped up tent, screams in the night, cries in the night, children giggling in the night, ooh, a voice, twigs lashed with twine hanging from trees. And the coup de grace, bits of a flannel shirt with teeth wrapped inside of them. Wow. What is it? I don't know, guys. Maybe you can explain it to me. But rest assured, your children, your grandchildren, they're in the same boat that I am. This film is crap. There is no nostalgic value in this movie for me. And I don't know how the hell there is nostalgic value for you because during its runtime, you're sitting there watching nothing. Nothing. Now, maybe there is a camp that says, you know what, I rather appreciate theater of the mind. I'm able to watch this film and think of all the spooky stuff that's not being shown. Let me tell you, there's a guy in cinema that is known as father of theater of the mind. His name is Val Lute. He made a bunch of films in the 1940s that are very boring and dull. And unless we're talking about the actress Simone or Simone Simon, depending on how you want to pronounce her name, um, there's nothing to those movies either. I'm gonna take a page out of Clive Barker's book, a man who I am very much a fan of and have been a fan of for decades, well, since 1988. Um, he doesn't subscribe to theater of the mind. See, what Clive Barker will tell you, what I will tell you, theater of the mind is good for books. I like books. I read a lot. I recommend that you do too in a book. You know, it's a thing with pages. That's what theater of the mind is for. Now, there are some people that, cinema lovers that say, no, theater of the mind is perfect for horror. Because the scariest thing you can imagine is not what you see on the screen, it's what's up here. Bullshit. Bullshit. You've never read a book in your life, have you? Okay, that's what that is. When you say that, I say go read a book. You'll get to experience theater of the mind. I have enough intelligence up here. I have enough going on up here. I have enough going on up here. It's called the soul, you know? Um, Literature, absolutely theater of the mind. But I don't need to fine tune my imagination. When I sit down to watch a horror film, I want to see stuff. I don't want you to allude to it. I don't want you to show the creature off camera all the time. Once in a while, the occasional off camera kill, I'm fine with. No problem. A monster, a creature, a special effect being off camera for a portion of the film, I'm fine with that. But if I've gone through the whole film and I never see the creature, I never see special effects, I never see a single kill, I want to say you are a piece of shit when it comes to being a horror film. But there is the camp that says, no, no, it's theater of the mind. Let me tell you something. John Carpenter believed in theater of the mind. He truly believed in it. You would see very little in Halloween. Okay. So he goes on to make The Fog, and he relies on that theater of the mind until he gets a call from his staff. He's off prepping for another film, and he gets a call from the studio. I'm guessing Avco Embassy, and they say, "John, we got a real problem here. We're editing The Fog, and it's just not scary, man. There's nothing to it." John says, "Are you kidding? Are you sure? Really? Yeah, John, this is really boring, man. This is supposed to be a horror film. You got nothing going on." What did John Carpenter do? He relied on theater of the mind. It worked in Halloween. It did not work in The Fog. So what does John Carpenter do? He takes his happy ass back to the studio. He has a few meetings and says, okay. He sits and watches it and says, oh shit, you're right. This is not scary. Okay, we're going to have to do away with theater of the mind. As much as I love it, we've actually got to shoot some special effects here. We got to have some kills. We got to have some gore. We got to have something to get the audience. Because, yeah, you're absolutely right. This is not scary. And that was the last time, guys. The last time John Carpenter solely relied on theater of the mind. From then on, what does he do? The Thing, which is all about fantastic horror effects by the great Rob Bottin, a master of the craft. I put him right up there with Tom Savini as being the two greats of horror effects. Rick Baker, yeah, he's right up there too. But he did a lot of films that weren't horror. I'm pretty much gonna stick with horror on this one. Rob Bottin did some stuff that wasn't horror too, but come on, the horror that he did do, masters. Okay, absolute masters. So even Mr. John Carpenter, Mr. Theater of the Mind himself realized that's bullshit. If you're making a horror film, make a horror film. So with that being said, people will continue to put the Blair Witch Project high on a pedestal, whether it's because of nostalgia. Again, what nostalgia? The moment you realize you've been duped, it was a total fake out. Hollywood did best what it always does, screws the audience. Okay, yeah, great. Um, where's the nostalgia in that? Finding out it was all fraud. I don't understand it, but you must believe it because you're still paying 60, 70, $80 for a copy of the film in a hard box, multiple discs, maybe a poster. I have not. um, I've never been a fan of this movie. I will never be a fan of this movie. I think the sequels are far more enjoyable than the Blair Witch Project, and I'm not a fan of the sequels, but come on, man, at least there's some meat on the bone. So, wow, I'm amazed to have something in common with the youth of today. Most of us truly hate the Blair Witch Project and find it to be just a waste of time. Wow, that's amazing. Oh, all right. This is the end of the first episode of Not a Fan. I will be back with more. Until next time, try to deny the daylight.